The role of the workplace is to drive collaboration, engagement, and business results. But with hybrid work schedules, shifting needs, and various health requirements, bringing employees together as a team is harder than it used to be. With MRI, you can bring people back to the office in a way that suits their needs and the needs of the business. Create a safe, flexible, and productive work environment with space planning and reservation tools that empower employees to make optimal use of your workplace. Control the flow of employees and visitors in and out of the office with solutions that give you a full view of who's on site and who's working remotely. Leverage technology to evaluate usage and business demand, optimizing your space, and plan for the office of the future. Reinvent your workspace into a thriving workplace.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Realcomm Live. As I've been doing probably for the last 6 to 9 months, I'm going to start out this episode with not just one word, but with 3. First one will be essential. Second phrase would be not sexy. And the third would be inevitable. And the topic we're going to be talking today is about data. I've been on this journey for probably 22 years. It was kind of in the beginning stages of the data standards conversation. Realcomm 2001, Mike Anderson and I, a couple other people in the room talking about data standards. Nobody was in the room. This was not a topic people wanted to talk about 22 years ago. So you fast forward, and this organization called OSCRE comes along and says it's important for data, especially in a world like real estate transactions, to have some kind of a standard set, some standard rules. In other words, we're going to say street, we're going to say ST, or we're going to say STR, or we're going to say road, avenue. That's a very, very basic example. And when you think about all the different descriptors find in the real estate environment with all the transactions, if you start mixing and matching, transferring data from one system to another is impossible. So why do we want to transfer data from one system to another? Because we don't want redundant data. We want data to be able to talk to each other, to create relationships with each other, to tell stories. And if each system has got its own set of structure, imagine an accounting firm or a lease administration system, you can't talk. We're downloading to Excel and rekeying into other systems. So the OSCRE journey is one that everybody should be paying attention to. Lisa Stanley, who's the CEO of OSCRE, is going to be joining us today, along with Adam Hastings, the Chief Data Officer at Hines. In fact, let's bring them on. We'll continue this conversation today. Hello, everybody. How are you?
It's great to be here, Jim.
Good to have you. And Lisa, I don't know, how many years have you been on this journey?
10 years with OSCRE.
Okay. Adam, how about you?
I've been on this journey actually around the same amount of time here at Hines, 10 years in kind of our data centralization efforts.
Okay. So you've got scars. You've had sleepless nights. You've beaten your head with a hammer a few times saying, why don't they get it? Right. And I often used to use the analogy of an automobile. Can you imagine if we didn't have standards in the automobile industry and we had square tires and we had round tires and we had triangular tires? I mean, or 2x4s, 2x7s, 2x11s. We have to have some structure in a world where you're trying to scale things, right? So before we get started, Lisa, why don't you give a little bit of your background and how you got into the data standards journey, and then maybe a little history of the last 10 years of your role at OSCRE.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I've been in this industry called real estate for just about my whole career, working in a variety of different roles. Non-performing assets, everybody remembers those from the 80s, property management, working on the association side, in a lot of different roles that brought me to the conclusion of how important standards were. In the case of how the industry has evolved, the lack of standards has been a challenge. And as we look at where OSCRE is today, Adam and I share a similar longevity in terms of our roles here. We're fully vested, I think is a good way to describe it, in pursuing the importance of data standardization for this industry, not just within OSCRE, but really throughout the entire industry, bringing together that collaborative approach that only a consortium can accomplish.
And you have to be patient, right? I mean, in this world, because the battles are fought long and hard, and then sometimes the victories are small, and you just have to take those victories and keep moving on. I mean, it's not an easy job.
You're absolutely right. Tenacity is certainly something that I aspire to. I can't say that I'm always successful.
Well, 10 years fighting the OSCRE battle. I mean, that's a testimony to itself. I mean, people would get tired sometimes of the relentless time, energy, and effort that has to go into it. And sometimes you don't get the recognition or the credit that you need. And then when all of a sudden it happens, it's going to go, wow, this is great.
Well, it was people like you, Jim Young, who actually conceived the kernel that became the seeds of OSCRE in the very beginning, longer than 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like I said, we were talking about it at a time when, nobody was talking about it. And I actually think, going back to that 2001 timeframe, I just kept looking at fintech, and what it took for me to go on E-Trade and make a stock trade, and how they had aggregated, 15, 20, 30 different systems, retail systems, wholesale systems, government systems, into this little screen that allowed me to buy a share of stock. And it just automatically went and did. I said, they have data standards. Why shouldn't we? Our transactions are equally, if not more complex, right? And so that's where I got bit. And here we are 22 years later. Adam, how about you? How about your journey? How did you get here?
Yeah, so I've been in the real estate industry coming on just about 20 years now. And for the first half of my career or so, I was in a kind of a consulting capacity, mostly in the research space. So using, third-party economic and real estate market data to, do forecasting on values and rents and those sorts of things. And I came onto the investment side at Hines when Hines decided to bring the research function internal, and really start up an internal proprietary research group. And initially, my mandate was very similar to what I had done previously. Really, kind of building a research framework to analyze all of the different markets that Hines was active in around the world in a consistent way from a centralized research team. And so we built out this kind of analytical framework, which was kind of adopted into all of our IC processes and really just pushed down throughout our investment management business. And then after we had that framework pretty well established, I started to ask some questions like, well, we can create forecasts all day long, but, how does anything that we're doing here on the research side, relate to our own internal investment experience, right? And so at that time, about 10 years ago, there really was no centralized repository of really much financial and certainly no operational data for the Hines global portfolio. All of our data really lived in silos across our local kind of business units. So the journey that I've been on from there is all about developing kind of the business processes and kind of data flows to centralize all of that information. So we have, built a whole data and analytics team that I lead, and we have developed business processes to really get that data from our properties. And we are a very large privately held company that owns real estate in 28 countries across every asset type you can possibly think of, both on the acquisition and development side and across various funds and separate accounts and one-off joint ventures. So we just have a very complicated portfolio, and kind of figuring out the jigsaw puzzle of how to get this data from our properties into our centralized data warehouses has been my life for the last decade.
Not many people more recognizable than Hines. Reputation, top of the charts. So Lisa, what you do is you aggregate a lot of smart people like Adam from other organizations, right, to be your brain trust to help move these data standards. And they've obviously communicated to you that they have a vested interest in this happening, and you get that momentum going. So can you give us and we've talked about it already, but just give a little 30-second pitch on what is OSCRE? What does it stand for? What does it mean?
Sorry. OSCRE is an international, some may say global, nonprofit member organization of companies like Hines that have agreed to come together to focus on the development and support of implementation of real estate data standards. So it includes investment managers, corporate owners and occupiers, and what we call the external business partners that work with them, software developers, consultancy firms, and service providers. So what we have in terms of looking at our focus is to focus on the common ground, not where the differences are, because certainly there are nuances or differences between the organizations, but to figure out how collectively and collaboratively that brain trust, as you referred to, comes together to help the industry move forward in a much more effective and productive way than what has been the case in the past in the absence of standards.
Adam, when you were talking, all I could think was spreadsheets have been our friend and our foe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and when I think of Lisa's journey and OSCRE and all the Excel spreadsheet extractions and you know, wondering what would the world be like if we really did have a live, real-time integrated information architecture across companies and vendors where the data flowed freely. I mean, the time, energy, effort, and insight would be extraordinary.
Absolutely. I mean, Excel provides so much flexibility, but in terms of data governance and scalability, absolutely.
Every property manager, every asset manager,
Yeah.
they've all got their own idea on how the data should be used.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Lisa, over the years, OSCRE has gained different periods of momentum when different topics came in that touched OSCRE, right? Most recently, ESG is obviously making a lot of headlines, as we talked earlier. We're leaving the carrot phase and we're now entering the stick phase. Lots of stuff coming to coerce, force folks into changing their habits, right? So you've got a program called the Environmental Data Standards Project. I kind of nicknamed it EDSP. Can you give a little background, both you and Adam, on what that is and what does that mean for the industry?
I'd be happy to. It is our current data standards project. It was born out of a meeting that occurred in the third week of September last year in New York City as part of OSCRE's Council 100. And it's to address the need that organizations have to collect, to analyze, and report environmental data. These are some of the organizations that are actively participating in the project. I'm sure there's a lot of well-known companies here, CBRE, Brookfield, certainly Hines, looking at other organizations like Yardi and MRI who are participating in the service provider space as well, Cushman Wakefield and JLL, and in the consultancy side, EY, Lion Point. I think it's important to note that there are a lot of industry leaders that have committed their time and expertise for these meetings in the development phase now that are happening every 2 weeks. And then there's also other member-based associations like IFMA, Cornet Global, and Connects FM that have committed to have participants from their respective organizations participate in this project as well. So it's really, I think, as you look at it, probably one of the best examples of collaboration, certainly that I've seen since I've been at OSCRE, but also from a standpoint of concentrating on that common ground, not getting bogged down with pointing out where the differences are, and getting from third week in September to where we are today in the development phase for an association and for the real estate industry in general is just about warp speed.
And you have an architecture framework slide as well. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Absolutely. So as you look at this, a lot of people will say, well, there's certainly other standards organizations out there, and there's no question that there are. One of the challenges has been, as you look at these other sources, whether it's a benchmarking platform like GRES, whether you're looking at Beads or Haystack or Brick or others, it's analyzing what currently exists, pulling out the relevant data set that can be included in OSCRE's industry data model and evaluated by the people that are actively working on this project to figure out how we can create a much more comprehensive and probably cohesive approach as well. We're looking at 7 new use cases to extend the existing 140 plus use cases that already exist in the OSCRE data model.
So Adam, I mean, you've been in data for a good part of your career. Why is OSCRE poised to deal with this issue right now? And I mean, why are they in the perfect place at the perfect time?
Yeah, I mean, I think we believe at Hines that, in order to hold ourselves accountable for, reducing our carbon footprint, you need the data to prove it, right? And at the same time, we're seeing, not only for our own internal needs, but we're seeing our investor partners and our occupiers wanting access to that same data. And some of those same folks are involved in the data standards project. So there's really just this unique momentum here to really build these standards from scratch in an open and transparent way, more than I've ever seen for any sort of data kind of collection effort across the real estate industry in my time in the industry. It's really amazing how transparent and collaborative all of these various industry leaders are being. And we think just working together like this puts us all at a competitive advantage and really can drive the industry forward with these standards.
Yeah, there's an old saying, I forgot exactly how it goes, but boy, these people are lucky. They're in the right place at the right time. And I said, it's the 20 years of hard work that lead up to that moment in time that make them lucky, right? I mean, OSCRE has been just nonstop, steadfast in its pushing of the importance of standards. And now that, like you said, the carrot's leaving and the stick is coming, who better to tackle this problem than OSCRE? So. All right, why don't we take a brief break here from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back, and we're going to get more into the details of what OSCRE is going to be talking about at the conference and what their goals and objectives are, in the near future.
The wireless industry is changing fast, and Halo is leading the way as the new intelligent, cutting-edge leader in neutral host infrastructure. Serving all vertical markets, Class A office, hospitality, residential, healthcare, stadiums, and large public venues. Delivering state-of-the-art technology solutions with future upgrades to accommodate the highest demands of mobile users and new 5G applications. A trusted and proven partner to all wireless carriers, REITs, owners, and developers. The Halo team is leading the industry with the highest standards in mobile and wireless communication. A trusted and proven partner to all wireless carriers. The future of wireless is now, and Halo's full-service turnkey solutions are solving our clients' communication challenges, today and in the future. Halo, connecting the wireless world.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about OSCRE, but Adam, while I've got you here, I mean, Hines, as I mentioned earlier, a notable, large international company with the vision and the resources to kind of focus on the ESG, the E part of the ESG movement. Can you give us a couple specific things that Hines is doing on its own in relation to this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'll start with saying just the concept of sustainability and operational efficiency and reducing utility consumption has really always been part of our DNA of our property management teams and engineering teams around the world. So in one respect, this is not really that new for Hines. I think what is new is kind of the recognition within the industry that, we contribute a large share of the greenhouse gas emissions, and it's a core responsibility of our industry to, reduce our carbon footprint in anticipation of this regulatory requirements that we know are going to be coming. With respect to Hines's initiatives, we have a lot going on within the organization. So, I think most importantly, we have publicly stated that we intend to be net zero operational carbon by 2040. And so that's a huge and aggressive goal, more aggressive than kind of the Paris, Climate Accord targets. And so, in order to get there, what we have to do is get the data, and we have to really make some substantial, or we have made some substantial organizational changes as well to allow us, we think, to kind of, push the data journey forward in a faster way. So from an organizational perspective, I would say there's three main things that we've done. First is we've created an entirely new business unit geared toward ESG investing, really ensuring that the environmental and social factors are taken into account during the due diligence process and when underwriting a project. The head of this business unit is a voting member on our investment committee. So that's another way to really make sure that those factors are really focused on. So that's a big change here. That unit is actually further broken down into our global ESG team, which helps to set our overall firm ESG strategy, as well as our global venture lab, which is really looking to, build internally in some instances, and then in others, partner or invest in ventures that are focused on, carbon reduction and sustainability efforts. The second thing I would say is we've formed an internal carbon strategy team led by our SVP of carbon strategy. And we think we're actually the first firm in the industry to name a head of carbon strategy. So we're pretty excited about that. And that group, their focus is specifically on really developing the playbook by which we operationalize and execute on our carbon reduction goals at a building level. And then finally, where my team and myself come into the mix is we've created what we call our Global Digital Strategy Office, which is comprised of 3 kind of separate teams, but very interrelated teams. So there's my group, the data and analytics team, our information technology IT team, and then our business process group. And so it's the Global Digital Strategy Office partnered with that ESG group and carbon strategy team that are all working very much in lockstep to help kind of establish the processes by which we measure our operational carbon footprint, and then also determine the best tools and technologies that we can implement across our portfolio to, really monitor and measure our progress toward our carbon reduction goals.
Yeah, and for a guy who's been following this stuff for a long time in a lot of different phases of technology, that organizational realignment, in my opinion, is the key.
Yep.
No more silos. We see it. We see the prize. We can't do our own thing. We have to talk. We have to meet. We have to integrate. And I think that will ultimately prove to be your key to success, is the fact that you've recognized that and you've made organizational changes to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So as we wind down, and we already touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask it one more time, Lisa. Why is this time different? I mean, this is my 3rd rodeo on of ESG on the energy side. I've written articles over the years, and I mean, I guess I'm a little jaded. Why is this time different?
It's a great question.
And I know the legislation, the stick is coming, but anything else other that you point to?
The stakes have never been higher, and you're absolutely right. The Security and Exchange Commission, SEC, is certainly they're in the second phase of rulemaking right now. I think that as you look at that, certainly the requirement that there's a mandate for regulatory reporting is certainly a stick, if you will. But as you look at, as Adam said, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that come out of the real estate industry, what we're looking at is something that has been largely minimized or ignored by many organizations, but also from a standpoint of looking at being good corporate stewards. It's about reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. It's about becoming more accountable, more responsible, if you will, but also from a standpoint of doing the right thing that enables our planet to be a better place. And some people might say, well, that's kind of rainbows and pixie dust. I live in the shadow of Disney World in Florida, but it's a lot bigger than that. And I think as we look at the organizations coming together, OSCRE's role is the convener, not the controller of the conversation, but to provide that platform for people like Adam and Hines and Brookfield and Blackstone and others to come together and say, we can fix this and to make it happen. And it's already been proven, I think, by the progress that's been made since September.
Yep. Yeah, I love to hear the momentum. So we unfortunately are out of time. Adam, I'm going to give you the final thought on the importance of data standards. Pretend you're speaking to your peers and they're listening. What do you tell them about data standards, OSCRE, and then ultimately the Environmental Data Standards Project?
I mean, data standards are, the key to really making sure you have a consistent and scalable way to, monitor and analyze. And then ultimately the goal is to be able to act upon, some piece of business information, right? It is absolutely fundamental to the decision-making process. And so that's always how I explain it to people.
Yep. Yeah. Without the data, you're throwing darts.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for your 10 years at OSCRE and your continued devotion to the topic. Adam, so good to see some youthful energy added to the conversation with you and your peers. And I'm really excited to see this continue. And we're excited to continue these conversations at Realcomm and IBCon in June. So
thank you, Jim. We look forward to seeing you at Realcomm.
Same here. It's good to see people again.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Have a great day. Be well.
Bye for now.
All right. With that, we're going to go on to one of my favorite parts of the show is the news, weekly news brief. And Howard's been replaced this week by Lisa. And Lisa's always welcome to join in, and she loves doing it, I think. Right, Lisa?
Yeah. Big
She
shoes
says she
to
has-
fill with Howard, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he does such a great job, but so do
Yeah.
you. So let me get out of your way, and you can bring up the stories for the week and tell us what's happening in the world of prop tech.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jim. In the news this week, $49 billion in venture capital was invested in AI in 2022, up 40% from 2021, ushering in what experts in the industry say is the golden age of AI. The big question is what role AI will play in real estate, and our feature article this week dives into detail about the opportunity that AI represents and also how prop tech companies can maximize their advantage. There are several different subsectors in the real estate tech market where AI can make a significant impact. Some of these are primarily in the residential sector, but could cross over to the commercial sector as well. Some of these subgroups are residential search and listings, sector real estate brokerages, mortgage marketplaces and underwriting, renters and homeowners insurance. The insurance industry is a $125 billion market. AI could completely automate that insurance layer. Another subsector is construction estimation, bids, and materials. According to some estimates, the world is going to add 2 trillion square feet of real estate by 2060. So the amount of data the construction industry will generate is huge. The last one is sustainable construction. Since there's only so much we can do with existing real estate, layering AI into an architect's workflow could determine emissions outcomes early when recommendations could be made to triage cost, zoning, and sustainability. The article argues that startups are actually better positioned to utilize AI technology than legacy technology companies because due to unfavorable market conditions the last few years and layoffs and challenging issues, existing companies are playing more defense to preserve their core offering and not really able to embrace AI as strongly because they're trying to integrate into an existing product mix. This creates a pretty exciting window for startups to build ground up applications for real estate with AI at its core. The technology is not perfect according to the article, but is growing at a breakneck speed. Our second article was provided by our technology partner, Clockworks Analytics. This article explores fault detection and diagnostics technology and how, because one, buildings are aging, and two, HVAC systems represent a large amount of energy use, fault detection and diagnostics analytics play a critical role in the strategy to meet sustainability commitments. It points to several high-profile case studies like the U.S. Department of Energy's 4-year Smart Energy Analytics campaign, and also to healthcare provider Kaiser Permanente, who, in order to achieve aggressive goals for carbon neutrality, looked to reduce facility energy use by implementing data analytics. These are organizations that had aggressive goals for carbon neutrality and looked to reduce facility energy use by implementing FDD tools, and they saw incredible savings. So take the time to read this article. Finally, our last article spotlight is about 3D printed factory built homes. A California-based 3D printing construction tech company called Mighty Buildings is planning to build communities of sustainable, net zero 3D printed houses fabricated in micro factories that can be spun up virtually anywhere in a matter of months. Mighty Buildings says its homes require a fraction of the skilled labor used in traditional construction, are up to 3 times faster to complete, and are made to withstand hurricanes, earthquakes, mold, mildew, and insects. They're made with recycled materials, produce almost no waste, and can come equipped with solar panels and storage for zero net energy consumption. The price is about 20% lower than a comparable cinder block constructed home as well. Also in the news this week, there are a couple of noteworthy announcements. Hines launches a new ESG-centered business unit for their new projects. Visit, the world's first proactive building operations system, signs an agreement with Carr Properties to implement its AI-driven operation platform across their entire portfolio. And finally, Scott Cochran, president and CEO of Cochran Supply, is appointed to the CABA board of directors. So we want to say congratulations to Scott. There are just a few other articles that I didn't have time to mention, so take a look in your inbox for our weekly briefing newsletter, or just go to our website and click on the news link.
I don't know. I think Howard's getting nervous. You're nipping at his heels. As always, you do a phenomenal job. Well, the funny thing is on that Hines article, directly related to today's conversation, actually, we discussed it a little bit.
Mhm.
The AI topic going to be big topic, Realcomm IBCon, not just, oh, AI is cool. We're going to be digging into the case studies, the truths, the realities, the hype, trying to really hone in on where this is going. And again, it's going to be a major topic. So great job honing in on those relevant stories and making it easy for our viewers to get to the bottom line.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right. All right. So before we close the show and talk about next week, let's hear from our final sponsor, and I'll be right back. All right. Well, I want to say thank you to our guests and specifically to Lisa, who has been, like I said earlier, steadfast in her journey down the OSCRE road. Not an easy one, not for the faint of heart. You don't change fundamentals in industries in big ways without persistence and hard work and a lot of determination. And OSCRE as an organization has shown that, and Lisa specifically in that journey. Adam, just a great job with what you're doing within OSCRE and what's going on at Hines. We need warriors like you and people who are willing to, the late nights rolling up your sleeves, figuring out the tough stuff, the not sexy stuff, the block and tackle. But without that stuff, without that foundation, no walls are going to be built. Of course, all of our sponsors, and then our team, who every week works hard to put on this great episode or this great series. So with that, next week, you talk about another crazy important topic. So important that it's going to have its own forum in our pre-conference day, and that's on the topic of in-building wireless. So you talk Wi-Fi, you talk DAS, you talk CBRS, private networks, 5G. I call it the alphabet soup of wireless technologies. And really what everybody wants is one network, right? So you can put that network in and give your tenants cell phone coverage, give your tenants data communications, Wi-Fi, give your tenants the ability to make phone calls, connect the building systems, all the building automation, the IoT, the building IoT. So it's a huge topic, and boy, do we have a group of people that are world class. We won't find this kind of expertise in one place very often. And we are going to be bringing on Ilan Zakar, Nick Stello, Mike Osman, John Doolan, John Morris, and Jim Whalen, who are some of the best domain experts on this topic in the world, to talk about in-building wireless its future, which will be leading up to very deep conversations we're going to be having at the conference. So with that, thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great day, great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday on Realcomm Live. Be well.